Hello and welcome to this Oda episode of the Eternal Lore. On the last Oda episode, we saw the forces of Nobunaga and Nobuyuki taking on the army of Ieyasu Tokugawa, who was sitting on the border between Owari and Mino. Nobuyuki's army was very unsuited to combat and tried to hold its ground, whilst Nobunaga's forces destroyed the Tokugawa force by splitting them up and annihilating them in small groups. The victorious armies went on to fight a Chosokabe army that invaded Mino. They used the fire-projecting mangonels they had captured from the Tokugawa to attack the enemy before they arrived. However, it was still the traditional units that won the day for the Oda clan. Following this, the Oda began a three-pronged advance on the enemy coalition lands, Nobunaga heading south to attack the Tokugawa lands, whilst General Kiyonori headed east towards Etchu to attack the Honma. At the same time, Nobuhide headed south from Umi province to attack Iga. He was able to go straight into the castle assault this winter, avoiding the winter attrition but having to fight a battle. He has just destroyed all of the Hatakeyama reinforcements and now attacks the castle. No one has any doubt that they tried to take everything from us, our people, our lands, our clan, but they got nothing. And now the pendulum swings back and it is our turn to show our response. After what we've been through, what the enemy have done to us, we could take the entire nation and enslave every man who didn't kneel before the flower, and we would still have honour to spare after our deeds in this war thus far. The enemy know that we will have no mercy for them anymore, and they are scared. So we're back with the Oda. The situation is that Nobuhide's forces, having just defeated a Hatakeyama reinforcement army that was coming to the castle here in Iga province, is directing his men to actually begin the castle assault. He's trying to surround the castle by coming at it from both the east and west, where there are easier directions of approach because the walls are less steep. So they seem like the obvious directions to approach from. However, I'm still leaving some forces on the north side to keep enemy archers occupied and keep them on the walls there so they don't move back into a more southerly position in the castle from where they could actually fire at my main force. So here we see troops moving around to the west side. Just now we saw troops moving around to the east side, so the envelopment is continuing. It happened pretty much without incident. I was able to successfully envelop both the west and east sides, and the enemy didn't actually react very well. They had troops mostly stationed on the east side, however those troops were apparently expecting an attack from the northern wall of that part of the castle, so by coming round right to the east side, I was able to actually approach the castle unhindered. On the west side, it's a similar story. I actually came into the castle through the gates by burning them down, and as I did, all of the enemy forces in this western section of the castle retreated back into the centre, so it appears they didn't actually wish to contest this area, giving me free rein to enter in. The problem is that the archery tower in the middle there is now slowly sniping at my guys, but the capture point is down here on the lower tier, so I can successfully capture this tower without going into the intersection, and then that tower will be firing at the enemies in the intersection, so I can make it work for me. Back over on the east side, I've moved archers right up to the edge of the wall just to take out some of the enemies inside. They have archers of their own who for some reason do not return fire, and so I'm simply annihilating them with volleys of arrows. You can see the enemy archers simply stand and take it. I guess they were feeling particularly brave. You can see they are facing north, and there are more archers on the edge of the wall there. You can just about see facing north, so they're still expecting me to come from the north, perhaps because I do have some forces up there waiting just as a distraction, as I said. Meanwhile, on the west side, I've actually started coming up onto the central part of the castle because I decided that while the enemy are kind of just standing around, I might take the initiative and start going for the Tenshu capture point. The enemy did react. They're sending here Bo Ashigaru to fight with my Naginata Ashigaru. A fight that won't go very well, but they are in the way of the Tenshu capture point, so they are at least stopping me from capturing the castle, so I guess they're doing a good job in that regard. Here, down a little bit further to the south in the castle, the enemy have a stronger numerical advantage. This is where all their samurai are, and my Ashigaru coming up over the walls are going to have a hard fight against these samurai. However, my Ashigaru are quite powerful in their own right, and I'm gradually moving up more and more troops into this area to support. If you look at the balance bar, you can see already the fight is extremely in my favour. So hopefully I can simply win this even with sheer force numbers, even if I don't have any particularly good strategy. So the enemy are gradually getting cut down on this southern part of the castle. Meanwhile, I've now got troops over to the Tenshu capture point, which means there's now just 1 minute until I automatically win the battle. That is, if the enemy don't move troops up to try and start recapturing it. What they do is move these bow samurai around to shoot into the flanks of these guys capturing the Tenshu. They just stand there like bosses and take it for a while, but I do notice this and I react with these Naginata Ashigaru, who are already tired from fighting, but still I'm rushing them forward just to keep these bow samurai occupied so they can't keep firing, because their bow are going to do extreme damage to my Ashigaru troops if I let them just stand there and keep firing. See here on the east side, I attacked with everything I've got. I'm swarming through, annihilating the surviving Hatakeyama defenders. It looks like this part of the castle is going to fall with ease, but it doesn't even need to fall because you can see the timer in the top left hand corner has already run out, which means I automatically win regardless of what happens in these last few seconds. But I am still taking the opportunity to absolutely slaughter some hostile Ashigaru there, really laying down my dominance here in Iga Castle. A nice victory for Nobuhide's forces there, successfully defeating many Hatakeyama armies throughout this battle, capturing a not particularly useful but at least symbolic province, showing that the Oda armies are able to expand and that from now on we're not going to be constantly on the defensive. So next up, let's head back to the strategy map and check the battle results for that castle assault. They look quite good. It looks like we lost around 500 men to defeat a couple of thousand. Another excellent result, which at this stage we've come to expect from the Oda forces, being so veteran. So we've captured the castle. I'm going to quickly repair the castle itself, because I did burn down some of the infrastructure on my way in. And the province is pretty secure. The remaining Hatakeyama forces fled to Umi, but they're too weak to do any damage. So the next thing to think about in this winter turn is, should I attack the province of Echu using Kinori's forces? If I don't, he'll suffer winter attrition, but if I do, I won't be able to wait for my reinforcements and thus get a definitive advantage. I came down here to look at the battle itself. From the balance bar, it's telling me they already have an advantage, which I was interested by. And actually looking at the enemy force, I thought I probably can defeat it. So as long as I'm careful, I should be able to get in, minimizing my losses. Let's see how I can do. Even back before the divide, they called me the Master of Castles, a man who will always emerge from the smoke and fire with my armour clean and my sword dirty. For years I've been steward of the Eastern Oda domain. For years I've fought for no greater prize than avoiding the anger of Lord Nobuhide and keeping my men well fed. But now we are fighting once again for glory, conquest, loot, honour, dominion, and it feels good. I had my doubts like everyone else, but now I hold my loyalty to Oda close and think of nothing but victory. So it is time for another castle assault. Here's the castle itself that we need to get into. Let's see who's defending it. They actually have quite a lot of cavalry inside the castle, which is quite good for me, because they're not going to use them very effectively, because cavalry just aren't a useful unit in a siege unless you put them outside the castle. So already I know things are going to go well from the start. You can see I've hidden units on the south side in the forest, whilst the main bulk of my force is approaching from the north. So I was hoping initially to draw as many of the enemy forces onto the north side of the castle as I can, perhaps keep them there, making it look like I was about to attack at any moment, and then sneakily attack from the south. So that's what I was thinking initially, but that started to change when I realised that I could move my bow samurai around the west side into a nice position where none of the enemy archers could hit me. However, I could fire in at some of the enemy defenders. You can see small piles of bodies starting to develop. I'm doing the same thing on the south side. I moved up all my forces out of hiding because the enemy hasn't deployed any of their archers on the south side. All of their archers are facing off against my long Yari Ashigaru standing on the north side. So I've got a whole load of archers in various positions firing into the castle and taking out enemy forces pretty much with impunity, because the enemy's cavalry don't really seem willing to charge out and counter these archers, which is probably what they should do. They do have a lot of Naginata samurai though, which means my archery strategy isn't going to be ultimately effective, because those samurai are very good at shrugging off arrows, especially when they're coming in at awkward angles, and I've had most of their speed removed by the fact that ultimately I'm firing up an incline, trying to hit targets that are quite high above the guys firing. But you can see it was still quite effective. You can see I've almost destroyed an entire regiment of light cavalry. One guy was left, the entire regiment of bow Ashigaru inside bombards that one guy with arrows. Complete overkill. He takes about 20 arrows and falls to the ground. I don't know why those guys were so determined to take out that one enemy. But anyway, you can see it's also happening on the south side, annihilating entire regiments almost, especially the Yari Ashigaru, who are very vulnerable to that arrow fire. Now while that's going on, I'm actually moving units to attack the eastern section of the castle, or at least just capture it, because there's no one defending it at the moment, so I thought I might as well get my men inside. The problem with the guys coming from the northerly direction is that there's a giant climb, so loads of those guys are going to die during the climb. Luckily on the south side, where the majority of the forces are coming in, the climb is a little bit more easy to deal with, so they actually probably didn't take any casualties as they came up. I'm still though bombarding these guys inside. You can see these Naginata samurai are just soaking up the arrows as if they're not even coming in really. Huge volleys coming in. Most of them just stand there. The arrows pass right through them because of the armor saves. So they just stand and take it like men. So I am wasting arrows firing at them, because of course I have a limited number of volleys to play with, but still there wasn't that much else to fire at, so in this situation it was okay. Now I've captured this gatehouse, so I'm starting to move all of my bow samurai actually inside the castle to positions from where they'll have better shots, hoping to utilize more, well, the remaining arrows that I have with them. On the south side I still have tons of forces who haven't actually engaged. I'm just using them to stand off against enemy forces, keeping a few enemies back looking at them while my raid on the east side can continue. You can see the enemy eventually did decide to sally out and attack my forces. However, I'd placed a long Yari spear wall right in front of the gate leading to the inner sanctum, which means they were just charging out into these spears, and their cavalry in particular were simply being annihilated by that decision. So I'm pretty much negating any possible advantage they could have gained by charging out, by just fighting them in a situation which perfectly suits me. At the same time, the more and more men that the enemy were trying to pour into that situation were coming in through hails of fire, here using fire arrows to hit the Naginata samurai. Fire arrows are much more effective against armoured units, so actually those volleys were managing to kill more than like one enemy at a time. But of course you have a very limited number of fire arrows you can use. You have to wait a fairly long time after each volley before you can use them again. So for the most part, my archers for now aren't going to be very useful. Now you can see the guys who came in from the southerly direction are actually coming into the inner sanctum now to engage with the depleted regiments of enemy forces inside. Look at the ground, it's covered in arrows and enemy bodies. So you can see I've already taken a chunk out of their numbers, and now I'm hoping that my melee fighters will be strong enough to deal with them. I do technically have a disadvantage because I'm just sending Ashigaru against enemy samurai, but I'm hoping that force of numbers and the fact that I'm going to be very quickly surrounding these enemy regiments is going to tilt the balance very much in my favour. And of course I have a lot of faith in my men, who are quite veteran and able to hold out even in dire situations. Here though it is Yari samurai fighting with these enemy Naginata samurai, a fight which is only slightly not in my favour. Yari samurai are quite similar in quality to Naginata samurai, perhaps slightly worse. But I'm piling in more and more Ashigaru to help out there. You can see here I'm sending guys towards the north side of the castle to clear out enemy archers to allow the rest of my force to attack. Here, the situation isn't going all that well. I think it's my Naginata Ashigaru fighting with enemy Naginata samurai, a fight that obviously isn't going to go in my favour, so I need to work on getting those guys surrounded as soon as I can. Here the enemy archers have kind of slightly pulled away from the wall, so I've already started charging my main army up towards the wall, hoping to utilise the situation. These archers just stood there and allowed my Naginata Ashigaru to fight with them. The problem is there's another regiment of enemy archers just off screen firing in at my men, which means the longer this fight goes on, the more men I'm going to lose, so I need to resolve that fight quickly. Back over here is another fight I need to resolve quickly because I am starting to lose out. You can see this big blob of enemy samurai, now reinforced with katana samurai, are slowly slaughtering my men. I was taking heavy losses in that particular sector. But you can see I was able to surround them because one of the other enemy regiments of Naginata samurai gave out. So I moved all of my forces in the air to surround them, including my bow samurai fighting in melee, just so I can attack them from as many sides as possible, trying to harm their morale, get them to give up. You can see the Naginata Ashigaru proving quite effective, attacking the enemy's katana samurai from the rear. Very nice. We have the enemy heavily surrounded, so I no longer have to worry about taking heavy casualties in that area because the enemy's morale and energy is going to be fading quite quickly. On the west side of the castle, I'm attacking with sort of my long Yari Ashigaru from the main force. The enemy simply retreat as I come up. And at this point I actually already have managed to get some bow samurai over to the Tenshu capture point. You can see them here. So the Tenshu is now beginning to be captured. However, pretty much all of the enemy forces in the castle are dead. The only remaining ones were those retreating bow Ashigaru we just saw, who came into the inner sanctum and were slaughtered by some lone sword Ashigaru that I sent over just to keep them away from the Tenshu capture point. Because even if one of those enemy routing troops had made it to the capture point, it would have stopped the timer going down. So it was worth that merciless move to go and slaughter these Ashigaru. So the castle is ours. Another victory for Oda. Let's check the results. Pretty good. We lost around 400 with a defeat of 1,600. Not quite as good as Nobuhide's result earlier, but still a fine result for the forces of Kiyonori. Echu is ours. We've struck another blow to the Honma. The Honma are starting to get really screwed over by Oda's military campaigns now. This is good news. Now, one thing I do need to do though regarding the Honma is to clear out this little army that's standing around here in Echizen. It's been there for ages, raiding our food supplies, constantly damaging our infrastructure, but until now I haven't had enough forces to deal with it. But I have gradually been building up a garrison in Echizen to defend. But I thought actually I can repurpose this defensive force into a one-time attacking force, sending my Long Yari Ashigaru and Matchlock Ashigaru to engage with this small samurai army that the Honma have fielded. They do have a general, so they are kind of serious about this raiding force, but still, let's see if we can destroy them. Years behind enemy lines. This mission of our lords, even if I remember it, I doubt he does. Where are the armies? We have raided all we can raid. The people beg for relief from this war, but with our forces absent, only the Oda can gift them this. We've only made matters worse. And now the people have banded together into regiments under some Oda officer and are coming to kill us. Well, we have the samurai, we have the food. We shall have to gift these people with the ultimate form of peace. So this mini battle is about to begin. I've got my army of Ashigaru coming to take up a position just beside the hill on which the enemy appear to have positioned themselves. The enemy do have the defensive advantage, so if they want, they can hill camp and force me to approach and use their superior ranged units against mine. They do have bow samurai which outrange my Matchlock Ashigaru, so they can force me to come into range if they want. However, as I approached, they actually decided that they were going to go for an assault, which I thought actually probably does suit me. However, I wasn't paying very close attention, and they're actually assaulting faster than I thought they were. I wasn't actually looking at their movements at this point. So they move up really quickly, unleash a volley of flaming arrows into the regiment of the one experienced unit of Yari Ashigaru I have here. So they're taking out my best units immediately, very sneaky. I've moved my Matchlock Ashigaru forward. They were in loose formation because I was expecting them to be taking the arrows. That loose formation is reducing the effectiveness of their barrages, so as the enemy's main force charges forward, they don't really take up many enemies at all. So I'm forcing them to rush back up the hill to take up a position from where they can fire over the tops of my remaining Long Yari Ashigaru. Those Long Yari Ashigaru are in some sort of chaotic mess at the moment. I was struggling to form them up correctly. Luckily the enemy's charge was also very chaotic as well. They didn't come in an orderly fashion, but you can see that these inexperienced Long Yari Ashigaru are being attacked from behind. They're glitching out. You can see these guys are just breaking the line entirely for no particular reason. So things weren't going ideally. The enemy have cavalry charged my spearmen, so that's good news. The enemy's generals in trouble. But the real good situation for me is that I've got the enemy fighting uphill, and further up the hill I have my Matchlock Ashigaru looking down over the enemy formations. So I can take out the enemies engaging with my Long Yari Ashigaru because I happen to have line of sight over the tops of my own men's head. However, all that is very good, but you have to have your men actually firing for that to work, and my guys, well, they did the classic Matchlock Ashigaru glitch out tactic, where they just pretty much stand around for a long time. When they do come to fire, about 2 guys actually shot there, the rest of them just kneel down. Second rank firing a little bit more, taking out a couple of enemies. You see they're sniping guys on the edge of the formation here. I really wanted them to be firing at this general's unit that was just standing there. But luckily they did eventually take a volley correctly and annihilate the enemy force. However, unfortunately I can't show you that because this is a classic corrupted replay. See, it gets frozen on this frame here in the middle of the battle. But you can see here from the results, we lost about 300, killed almost 900. So in the end, once those Matchlock Ashigaru got to firing, they completely wiped out the enemy force in about 10 seconds, and the enemy routed entirely. So actually things went quite well. If the battle had lasted too long, Yari Ashigaru would have been wiped out, but luckily the Matchlock saved them. So now moving into the next turn, the Uesugi are up to no good. They've got a big army rushing towards North Shinano. Luckily I have a big army defending it. The Chosokabe yet again landing forces in Owari. How many armies do they have, and how many times are they going to land them in Owari? Quite ridiculous. The Hattori again up to no good. At this stage I don't even care what the Hattori do because they keep just losing in pretty much every engagement. Anyway, since we are now in the next turn, the Oda offensive can continue. You see here I was going to attack Mikawa in the last turn, but unfortunately had to suffer winter attrition, so now the reduced strength forces of Nobunaga are properly sieging the castle. He isn't really overpowering enough to definitely take it without a number of losses that could jeopardize future defenses of the castle. So I move Nobuyuki down to allow his forces to reinforce the assault. That means I have a giant advantage, and a quick auto resolve will give me that castle. Of course, I can't hang around with Nobuyuki because that Chosokabe force that just landed can potentially threaten either Mino or Owari, and there is actually somewhere in the area that I don't know about another Chosokabe force hiding in the forests just east of Owari that I saw sneak in there during the end turn sequence. So overall, we've got a lot to think about in this area. The enemy are probably going for Mino, given that that's what they've done before. The Tori too appears to be going for Mino, but with a less powerful force, and sending a couple of regiments back to Mino. Those guys on their own should be able to hold the Hattori once the garrison of the castle is also taken into account. Nobuyuki is going to guard Owari just to secure our home province, even though I'm not sure it's actually going to be attacked. Now the army that was just victorious over the Honma in Echizen is moving west towards Wakasa. I'm going to use them to support Takayama's forces in the war against the Amako. Down here in Umi, the giant garrison I've built up to defend the castle is marching out to annihilate the two Hatakeyama groups that are hanging around. It's barely worth annihilating them, but I quite wanted to because they could damage my infrastructure, and they have a Metsuke in their ranks, which means killing them is killing that Metsuke. And at the moment I am having trouble with enemy agents, as I seem to always be doing, so it's good to get rid of that guy. The problem now is that these forces actually ran out of movement points. I expected them to be able to come out, kill them and get back to the castle, but they can't. So that was a misjudgment from me, and now it means the castle is in danger. Were it to be attacked now, things could go quite wrong. However, I found out that it's not going to be attacked. I moved the ninja out westward and found out that the Hatakeyama have no more armies west of the Oda borders, which means Nobuhide can simply storm out of Iga and attack Yamato province with a giant advantage. A quick auto resolve gives us that castle, minimal losses, and we've captured a critical province. Yamato is very good, strong economically, and it's able to recruit superior warrior monks, which means it's potentially very strong militarily. I had to cancel some of my local recruitment efforts in order to get enough money to actually repair the castle. I did want to repair the castle because it's going to improve the repression and allow Nobuhide's army to move out of the castle as soon as possible, and hopefully exploit some of the other local weaknesses of Hatakeyama. So if I can just wipe the Hatakeyama out of the Kinai area, things are going to be much more secure for Oda's western borders. I'm using my ninja to scout to see what the situation is. We can see that both Kawachi and Ki have no standing army defending them. It looks like Nobuhide can actually go straight to Kawachi in the same turn, potentially capturing another castle in one fell swoop. The public order situation was strong enough to allow me to do this. However, Nobuhide's forces couldn't quite reach the castle. It seems that the little movement aura wasn't quite telling the truth, so unfortunately he is now stuck in enemy territory. The Oda have returned? Ha! Years ago they were whipped from this place by some other samurai bunch, then half the people marched off to chase them, hoping they would come back with armfuls of riches at another town's expense. But what did they come back with? A meaningless question, for they did not come back at all. Now the Oda returned to their place like a stone rolling down a hill. The will of heaven shows itself thus. But it doesn't matter. Let the samurai be samurai. Bring me my tea. So next up, I need to deal with the Uesugi invasion going in North Shinano here. You can see that from the look of the army, it's actually not all that powerful. It doesn't have its full capacity, and I actually have loads of guys in the area. I moved up an extra regiment from South Shinano, because I wanted them to reinforce North Shinano anyway, so I thought they might as well come and take part in this battle while they're at it. Get all the forces together. They're being led by General Toyotomi Takafusa here, and they're going to go head to head with the Uesugi forces. Had a nice advantage, slaughtered the enemy forces in an auto resolve. Bish bash bosh, the problem in North Shinano very easily resolved. The Uesugi not doing too well there. Now up in Etchu, I really want to secure Noto, because if I don't, I'm going to have this thorn in my rear stopping me from advancing eastwards. So I sent Kinori up to siege the castle. The Hatakeyama have a giant army guarding it, so it seems they do place some value on this province. I'm getting all the guys I can together, and actually I have quite a big advantage in the end. So I'm going to sneakily steal this castle as well. Another conquest for the Oda. It's been a long time since we saw the Oda make so many conquests in such a short time. A whole bunch of enemy agents are expelled from the castle as I come in. Hopefully those guys aren't going to cause too much trouble. Now it looks like Echu is on the brink of rebellion, so I need to get back there pronto. So I'm going to move the reinforcement army back to guard that area. Plus the Yamanouchi off to the east could come and storm the area, so I need to be prepared for that. Now we're in the next end turn sequence. The Tory move up some reinforcements, but they're not going to use those reinforcements for that assault on Mino. They're coming straight in. I have only a tiny advantage in terms of balance. I have the defender's advantage. I was going to fight this battle, but I thought actually it'd probably be quite boring, so I decided to just auto-resolve it, mainly because the Oda army is mostly garrison troops, about which I don't care all that much because you get them back for free when they're defeated. So even though I actually took quite a lot of casualties getting rid of the enemy, it doesn't really matter. We've just managed to move on quickly and those units will just respawn. So we got through the end turn sequence without any other particular events happening, so now it's time for the Oda to make their moves again. Here in Wakasa, I was hoping I could move up towards Tango, but the Amako forces still have a strong presence, probably too strong for Takayama and his small group of reinforcements to get past, so I was holding off on the offensive there for now. Now, here in Umi, I decided that the situation is actually getting quite good. I don't need to defend it as much, so I sent a couple of their guys to actually go and guard Owari. The Chosokabe army is still standing around waiting to attack. I'm not sure what they're planning to do, but it means I have to also still stand around in that area and wait for them to attack because I can't get a definitive advantage in order to actually go and assault them. I'd rather try and take the defensive advantage. Meanwhile, Nobunaga is continuing his rampage south, coming up against more Tokugawa defenders. So I attacked the next province, but there is actually another Tokugawa army just off to the east, which means if I take it, I need to take it with few enough casualties to defend against an immediate counter-attack. Let's see if that's possible. So we'll only be seeing the beginning of this battle this time around, and we'll see the main part of it happening next time. But for now, let's set the scene. The Oda army coming in on the west side of the map. The enemy has a river defending them, and their big castle, of course. Most of their forces are on the west, north, and east sides, so it seems they're confident I'm not going to come from the south. However, their enemy forces are feeling quite mobile today by the looks of things. They're actually moving and reacting to my presence, so it seems that these guys actually do intend to stop me getting inside. So you can see the first thing I did was come around the north side, since it's simply an easier attack direction and it's closer than going all the way around the south. When I arrived, I started skirmishing with a couple of enemy archers on the wall. The enemy archers were just a single regiment of Ashigaru. I had my own regiment of Ashigaru firing back at them, and I had two regiments of matchlock Ashigaru, and I thought maybe I can overpower these guys even though they're in cover with simple sheer force of fire, hitting them with arrows and deadly volleys of matchlock fire. Finally, my matchlocks get around to bombarding the enemy forces. I was hoping to see the enemy would take massive casualties, but of course I am actually still quite far away, and the enemy's casualties are quite limited. So I realised that this skirmishing option was going to go badly. I've already taken casualties among my own archers, so I fell back from that situation and started thinking of proper assault strategies, splitting my forces, sending an attack group to go around to the south side, while the rest of my forces position themselves for a future assault, which we'll be seeing in the next Oda episode. That's all for this episode, but to see the Takeda finish off their gigantic battle with the Sogo, tune in next time to the Eternal Law.